that it's actually a thing, and that we're not broken or defective or there's something wrong with us when, you know, a day before your period, you're so exhausted that you just want to sleep in, or you want to go to bed early, or you want someone else to deal with all of the responsibilities of life. It's okay. You're not failing at life, ladies, I promise. But I love that your daughter brought this up, because I think this is the incongruence with the feminist movement. And I'm, you know, a card carrying member of the feminist club. So I'm hardcore, but I also think that it does not mean that, you know, or for me, feminism doesn't mean that you can just do everything that men can do and you can do it exactly the same every single day of the month. Like, it doesn't really work like that. We have to acknowledge our body's cycles, and that monthly cycle is so amazing, because what we can do is really harness the power of it. We can use that ovulatory time when estrogen is high and testosterone is high and our energy is generally peaking to our advantage, and then take care of ourselves closer to our period and during our period. And then we're going to get so much more out of those energy filled weeks that are in our cycle. So if we can do it that way and not constantly be trudging through and pushing, which is very masculine. It's like, you know, we will just, I think that we will certainly be able to not feel like we're dying in that, you know, that week leading up to our period. And we might not notice as many PMS symptoms as well. So that's a whole other thing. You know, it's like this whole time of our cycle, again, if you're just going, like, for instance, I had a woman reach out recently and she said, well, I'm doing CrossFit on day 1 of my period, and I have these huge clots that come out of me and I bleed really heavily. And I was like, honey, you do not need to be doing CrossFit on day 1 of your cycle. But it's crazy, because we're, you know, when you think about CrossFit, gosh, that if that was ever a masculine thing, and, you know, the fact that most of the time trainers, generally speaking, are not trained around a woman's cycle and, you know, how our menstrual cycles work, generally speaking. So we're just going every single day, doing CrossFit 3 times a week, you know, in the lead up to our periods, during our periods, and during ovulation, and instead of really working with our cycles in that way.
100% agree with you. Which leads me nicely onto the next question about exercising during your period.
Yes.
How do you feel about that? You know, is there a good exercise strategy for different times of your cycle? What do you think about exercising during your bleeding times, those first 5 to 7 days of your cycle?
Yeah, I think again, this is, in my book, I talked about this a lot, and I've always talked about this, and I know this is the way you think too about our bodies, is that we have to stop looking outside of ourselves for the answers to what is going on inside of ourselves. We are the experts on our bodies. And this is a whole new concept to most of us, because we've constantly been told from the time we're children, we go to the doctor's going to take care of us, they're going to fix the problem, and then we're all going to be well again, and we'll get back to our lives. And I think that general narrative is what we all subscribe to. And I get it, but I just think that there's, you know, medicine is to help in an acute situation, but you have to start to trust your intuition again. And most of the time that intuitive voice is really tiny and quiet, and we have to start to listen to it more and really trust ourselves. Like, trust that, you know, the symptoms we're experiencing are legitimate symptoms, and they're not just, you know, random things happening. Your body is talking to you every day. The symptoms of your period, your whole cycle, what you feel throughout your cycle, mentally and emotionally and physically, are signs from your body. They're messages, and we just we don't have a lot of body literacy, so we don't really understand what they're saying to us. So with that said, I think with something like exercise, just as I was saying with this young lady asking me about CrossFit, if you are experiencing these symptoms and you're working out really hard in the first week of your cycle, then you really have to think about why that is. And maybe next month when you have your period, don't do that. Maybe try yoga or try Pilates or something that's less intense, maybe some weightlifting, and do that and see how you feel, because that is going to really tell you what's working for you and what's not. Because there's definitely some research on how you should exercise throughout your cycle and what you should do or what potentially avoid. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we're not really working with the research studies, we're working with human bodies. And so how does your human body respond to exercise at a certain time of your cycle? Do you even feel like exercising on day 1 of your period? Likely not.
And I
Yeah,
think for some women, yeah, like you were saying, you know, they're going for a walk might be great. Doing some yoga might be great. And if CrossFit feels good for you and it works for your body, go for it. I
totally.
think I think
Absolutely.
giving women the I don't want to say permission, but just, you know, reminding them that you have to listen to what your body is telling you, and you have to listen while it's still a whisper, because if you keep ignoring it, it gets louder.
Very much so. Like it starts to scream at you and it's not fun, I promise.
No.
I
Listen
know,
and obey.
exactly.
So I want to talk a little bit, because this a question that came up quite a bit about contraception. Is there a good type of hormonal contraception? What do you recommend for contraception? And if you're trying to get off of hormonal birth control pills, I know that's a whole section in the book,
Oh,
so
yeah.
we'll talk about that. But what are your thoughts on good options in terms of contraception, first of all?
Yes, this is, the ongoing challenge that humanity seems to face, and it's a challenging question to answer. But I think that, first of all, I want to say that we all have to choose what feels right for us. And in the moment that when I was 19, the birth control pill felt right to me based on the information I had. So what I want to reiterate to everyone is that informed consent is so crucial. We have to know all of the positives and the potential side effects of a form of birth control before making a decision. So I really encourage women to do that research and find out when they're trying to figure out what form of birth control to use. When it comes to the type of birth control, again, I think it's so individual, but for me personally, I don't buy into the hormonal birth control options because of the fact that they are shutting off ovulation. That's their mechanism. A lot of women don't realize that, and they don't realize that ovulation is so critical for the making of estrogen and testosterone and progesterone and a few other hormones. And then there's, of course, birth control pill side effects that come with that. And so I really believe that when it comes to hormonal birth control, like pretty much all of them, minus the Mirena IUD, because you can technically still ovulate on that, then, those are really problematic, and they will be for a long time. I think if you have something like endometriosis or a debilitating condition and you need it as an interim for you, I fully support that. I think that, again, we need to do what we need to do in order to have some quality of life. So there's that. However, I will say again, like, I know that because there's such a lack of education around our cycles and our bodies, I understand why women would go on a form of hormonal birth control. So I'm totally not shaming anybody. With that said, the Mirena IUD, it's got its challenges, but for generally speaking, women will ovulate, maybe not consistently, but they will ovulate on it. So I always ask women to track their cycles, take your basal body temperature, see whether you're actually ovulating, and then determine from there. But Mirena is very helpful for women who have heavy periods. And so for anyone who doesn't understand the mechanism, it's a progestin only form of birth control, and it thins out the uterine lining, because that's what progesterone does, and thins it out so much that you don't bleed anymore. So technically you still ovulate, but you don't really get a period because your lining is so thinned out. That can be a godsend for most women. They're just like, sign me up. And so I really do get that. But I think that, of course, we have to figure out the lifestyle piece of this too. My favorite form of birth control is the fertility awareness method, the symptothermal version of it, where you're taking your basal body temperature first thing upon awakening, you're observing your cervical fluid. The benefits are so vast. I recognize that there's a bit of a learning curve, and you have to, you should usually work with someone who's trained to understand it. But I have used it for over 10 years now with, a lot of success. No babies that I know of. And and many of my colleagues, many of my clients have as well. So again, I know that it's not necessarily appropriate for everyone, but I do really think that is, to me, it's the gold standard of birth control.
Yeah, I mean, apart from condoms, obviously, for their
yeah,
and vasectomies. I'm just going to put that out there as well.
Yes. Thank you for mentioning. Oh my God, I know. Yeah, the guys, this is the other thing. I'm gonna just do a little rant here for a moment, because the fact that we are fertile for a very short window time frame in every single cycle, and that men are fertile every single day of their lives and can literally impregnate a woman every single day of their lives for decades, is insane to me. And the onus for birth control is on us. Again, you know, we could go on. I know. I feel like we need another birth control call rant. Um, so yes, I know. Deep breaths. But yeah, ladies, the vasectomies are great. Condoms work. And no matter what you've been told about condoms, I feel like Planned Parenthood, and no shade on them or anything like that, but Planned Parenthood seems to think that condoms are sort of this side thing now, and hormonal birth control is where we should be focusing our attention on. And that to me is crazy, because condoms have worked really well. They're very effective. And that's what we use when, you know, I'm in my fertile window. So I really think that we need to be bringing the condoms back.
Absolutely. And, you know, I mean, even apart from contraception, just from an STD perspective, I think, you know, we really need to respect the condom.
Yes.
If they're used properly, you know, they could be cheap, cheerful, effective, non-hormonal, non-disruptive, you know.
Yeah.
I don't think they get enough respect.
I completely agree with you. I know. I'm in the same boat.
Okay.
Oh, should I talk about the copper IUD real quick?
Please, yes.
Okay. Yes. I mean, that's another one that everyone's on. And, you know, that's, you know, again, everyone says, oh, that's great because it's a non-hormonal IUD. It's a non-hormonal form of birth control. And again, it reminds me of the fact that we don't trust our bodies. We are programmed to fear our bodies and our fertility. And we spend decades preventing pregnancy. And then we spend a lot of time trying to get pregnant once we get off of these forms of birth control. Not that the copper IUD is like that, but it has its fair share of side effects. And I think that, yes, it's safe and it has one of the highest efficacy rates and, you know, and satisfaction rates. But I hear all the bad things about birth control, as I'm sure you do too. I'm not hearing about all these women who love their copper IUD, but oftentimes I hear about the terrible bleeding and the spotting and the insane pain that comes with a copper IUD. So be cognizant of that and don't just accept a brush off when you are experiencing these symptoms for months on end after you've had a copper IUD placed. I think it's really important for us to know that, as well as mood changes because of the potential copper toxicity, which is not really well known in the research. It's not researched well at all, but I don't know. I've seen enough of this to know that something is off with the copper IUD.
Yeah, I think, you know, that's a key message, isn't it? That, you know, first of all, pain is not normal. And, you know, pain is a sign that there's something wrong and that needs to get checked out. Whether we're talking about pain with sex or pain with periods or pain with your contraceptive method. And don't let that get brushed off. But as well as that, as you said earlier, every woman is N equals 1. So if something doesn't feel right to you, that's enough. You know, you don't need to justify yourself. If it's not working for you, we're done. Let's move on. You know?
Exactly. I love that stance.
So let's say someone's coming off hormonal contraception. And I know this is a big chunk of your book.
Yeah.
So I really do encourage every woman, and, you know, for every woman that you know as well, like this is a really useful resource. But can you just give me like a brief overview of some of the key things? Now, you may not be aware, but I'm minorly obsessed with good bowel health and bowel movement and avoiding constipation. And I think that's one of the key ways, isn't it, that we can really help our bodies detox, particularly from excess hormones, you know. And I love that you have a whole section about the liver in there as well, because really, who doesn't, you know, the liver is just where it's at in terms of hormonal balance and getting that good gut health that's going to keep your hormones happy. But where's a good place to start in terms of coming off hormonal contraception? What do women really need to focus on?
Yeah, I would say that the first thing is if you're considering coming off of it, you know, a lot of women wait a couple of months because they're nervous and scared, which I get. So I would suggest starting with just some dietary changes if you are considering coming off of it, or immediately after you've come off of it. And what I suggested in the book is, you know, essentially what I ask women to do is to start to rethink how they make their plates. What is on your plate on, you know, morning, noon, and night, and what are you snacking on? And so what I suggest is a basic ratio is, you know, half of your plate as the leafy greens or cruciferous vegetables that are, you know, these are really liver supportive foods. And also on the other half of your plate, a quarter would be fat and a quarter would be protein, because we need amino acids to support our liver function as well. In fact, that's, how phase 1 and phase 2 work. So that would be where I would start. So lots of cruciferous vegetables. That is, the compounds in these cruciferous vegetables, as we were talking about, they are what are going to support your liver's detoxification capabilities. And for some of us, we have some genetic issues like me. I, seem to have all of them. My detoxification does not work well. So we need the extra support. And so that's where I would really encourage women to start. I think the immediate response is to go straight to supplements, and supplements can obviously be very, very helpful, and I do recommend them. But I also am cognizant of the fact that a lot of us end up with supplement graveyards, and we buy all these things that we're told to buy. We don't really know why we're buying them in the first place. We're kind of just going on what people say. And then as a result, we end up not knowing what's working and what's not. So again, I think that the food is so critical. And I think the other thing that we have to be focused on as well is how we chew our food, how we actually eat, because we're all so stressed as it is, right? I mean, we are driving and eating, we're standing and eating, we're walking and eating, we're shouting at our kids and eating. It's just like, it's crazy. And so your body senses that stress. And when you're stressed, and this is based on millions of years of evolution, we don't digest our food well. It's not going to work, ladies. You can't eat the leafy greens and then not digest well. So you got to chew your food. You got to be in a calm environment when you're eating your food. Try not talking too much, and chew your food 20 to 30 times. That alone is going to help absorption and assimilation of your nutrients, because I want everyone to remember that when you come off of the pill in particular, you often are very depleted in very key nutrients that are supportive of your ovarian function and your cycle. Magnesium, zinc, selenium, iron, we are a host of them. And then of course, the pill it does a number in our livers too. So we really have to be focused on that. So I start there with everyone. I also think that a few key supplements are really useful. I think magnesium is amazing. Magnesium is, it's used in over 300 enzymatic processes in our bodies. So it's kind of necessary, and yet we're also deficient in it. It's also been shown to be really helpful for any kind of mood issues associated with our cycles. In fact, studies actually show women are more deficient in it in the second half of their cycle, and it correlates with all of these mood-related problems. So, highly recommend magnesium, something like a magnesium glycinate or a magnesium citrate, especially if you have constipation and you want to get those bowels moving. The citrate, that is. So that I think is a good place to start too. I also think a general multivitamin can be so helpful for us. Yeah, just because across the board, I think we just need to replenish nutrients. So I find a multivitamin, is very useful. So those are sort of the basic things I recommend for women. And then there's, of course, so much more.
And would you recommend an omega-3 supplement, or would you prefer women to get that from food?
I definitely recommend an omega-3 supplement. I feel like, again, we've got to figure out our digestion, and I know that's kind of the long game for the most part, but yes, an omega-3 supplement for sure. Yeah. I use cod liver oil, and I really love cod liver oil. For me, that, that seems to work really well, but I think it's interchangeable. Ultimately, I think you do the omega-3. If you do the omega-3, then I recommend testing for vitamin D to see if you're deficient, and then doing a vitamin D supplement too. Because again, that's another, like the period vitamin. It's certainly helpful for so many aspects of our health, right?
Bone health, musculoskeletal pain, brain function. I mean, it's another hormone for us, really, isn't it?
Totally. I know.
So many knowledge bombs during our chat here. What I want to just kind of, wrap it up with and bring it home with is, what do you wish women and girls knew about their periods, going into this large portion of their life? If we're looking at the average age, being 11, 12, and, the average age of menopause is 51, that's a lot of years where we're negotiating menstrual health. What would you love women and girls to know about this?
I think for women, I would say that you can change your period story, that your period does not have to define your life. It does not mean that you have to suffer at various stages in your life. I think for girls, that your period is not something to be ashamed of or mortified by or triggered by. It is something that it happens to basically all of us. And it can be a remarkable way to be in tune and in sync with your body. And yet we have been conditioned to believe that it's something to dread. It's a nightmare. It's puberty sucks. Perimenopause sucks. Yes, it's painful. Yeah, all of the P's, the puberty, the perimenopause, the pregnancy, the postpartum, it's all of it, right? The period, it's all terrible. And I really feel like I want women to know that we're at the point where we need a hormonal makeover. Hormones and periods need a rebrand. And we're at the point now in our society where finally periods are having a moment. They're definitely having their time. And if you can start to get educated about how your body functions, your unique cycle works, it is going to change your entire life, because you now have this education. You can have a conversation with your doctor that's not full of fear and feeling like they know more than you do about your body. And you can also start to live in harmony with your cycle, as we were saying earlier, with exercise or with the way that you're eating or how you're living. Maybe you need to take some things off your plate in the lead up to your period, whereas before you would never have known that, and you just continually struggle through. So that's ultimately what it is that I want everyone to be able to get to know their flow.
Love it and love it.
Yeah, right? I love it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
The book is fiction. I'm trying to get it so it's not shining on the screen here. There you go. That's
yes,
better.
I know, right? I figured I'd have one too, just so that everyone can see. This is the US version. I know in the UK, you guys have a bit of a different version. I don't know. What does it say on yours?
It says WTF is going on.
Yes. I got to keep that. You know, I should say this, Michelle, actually. So the UK publisher wanted to change my cover completely and make it very bland. And I was like, no, you don't understand. Women don't even know these problems are actually problems. They need to see the problems on the cover of the book, because then we're going to start to normalize this. So yes. Anyways, so, you have a little bit of a different version.
So your uterus is not trying to kill you. I think that's a key message.
Very key. Oh my goodness. Thank you.
The book is essential reading if you have a uterus, if you know somebody who has a uterus, and you want them to be happy, to have a happy relationship with their uterus and their ovaries and their body and their brain, because our reproductive health really influences, everything else that's going on in our world. Mm-hmm. And if you're not having happy periods, don't just turn the volume down, put a Band-Aid over it, medicate it away, find out what's going on, listen to your body, take charge of your health. Knowledge is power. And I think this is a really good manual for navigating menstrual health. So Nicole, thank you so much. Where can people find out about you on social media? What's your website? What are your handles?
Thank you. You can find me at NicoleJardim.com. That's where my blog is. I've been talking about this forever, as you know. And you can also go to fixyourperiod.com to find sellers for the actual book. And there's a lot of book bonuses that come with that as well. You just enter your name and email address. I'm on Instagram mostly. I feel like that's where everyone is these days. All the kids are at. So you can find me at Nicole M like Madeline Jardim on there. And I'm pretty much sharing almost every day period gems.
Fantastic. Amazing. And as I said, the book is fantastic, really great resources. So Nicole, thank you so much.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you so much for having me. I so appreciate it.
Pleasure. Bye.
Bye.